Greetings. This is Elea Eternal. It's another episode of 1320 Time Stream. Okay, we here have the Blue Planetary Storm. Tone 10 and seal 19. The 10th day of our dog wavespell. How has that been going for you? I'm just going to check in. If you want, you can throw down some comments in the comment section, or just kind of check in for yourself. Just kind of tune in with you. Because that's what's really important, is for you to tune in with you and really find out how that's going, find out what has come up for you. And also another thing which I find is important is just to kind of like glean the continuosity, the continuum that is present. It's like, see how the energy of today is still connected to the energy of 9 days ago. Today's our 10th day, where we're perfecting, manifesting that energy. Tomorrow we will be releasing and liberating that energy that began 9 days ago. So let's get into it. We have our mini breath. Let's do that. Well, it's going to look like this. We're going to have our left wrist and our left baby toe. Left wrist, left baby toe, out breath. Begin when you're ready. Which is your planetary storm. Continue. Okay, nice little breath there. So yesterday was interesting. It was really about kind of like allowing ourselves to kind of witness and realize our reflections, see where those are, really, show up, and let those blockages go. Stop blocking those, dissolve those blockages. And just kind of allowing it to be, and everything was like a dynamic construct, and really allowing ourselves to find the ease within it all. And so it's interesting because I find like the storm has facets that are like the mirror. Very much like all of the ones before them, there are facets, because one energy is really simply becoming another. And so in this way, the storm has a lot of relativity to the mirror. And the way I find that is that the mirror has those kind of like the many reflections. The endlessness is kind of like the infinite reflection, kind of how we put two mirrors in front of each other, and then they endlessly reflect each other, and it creates kind of an infinity kind of energy, as well as the mirror being the representation in the system of kind of like thoughts, reflections, things of this nature. There's a myriad. We all know what thoughts are like. We all know how relentless they can be, how they can show up in our minds, in the different patterns, the kind of energies they have, and how chaotic their presence could be. And so in this way, I find we do find another definition of the storm. Now, one of the very classic definitions is the rainstorm. Very classic. Clouds in the sky, maybe some thunder and lightning, some rain, almost reminds me of a Queen song. Yeah. And so we have this very classic definition of kind of like a thundering elemental presence. which I feel the storm very, very well defines itself as in this way, which is the storm energy. I also find, in respect to the mirror aspect, which is what we're talking about, we have kind of like a chaotic mass, like a chaotic cloud full of thoughts. In many ways, like, I find the storm also kind of represents, like, it's not necessarily, it's like the moon in a way, how in one aspect of the moon, see the moon, the eagle, things like this, the storm, there's an aspect of them that represents something in the sky. Now, this is kind of what I wanted to touch on. I'm just looking for a good like analogy to really bring that to bear. And I was going to use the moon, but in fact the moon is in the sky, even though it represents lakes and other bodies of water. But the actual terminology of the moon is in the sky. The eagle and the snake are really good. The eagle and the serpent are a really good analogy, because the serpent is obviously a very ground-bearing kind of animal, and the serpent is a very kind of like sky-bearing animal. But where I'm going with the storm, you can even kind of see it a little bit in the symbol, how there's kind of this like cloud-like eye in there, and it's above, and then there's this kind of like energy on the ground. And so there is in this seal as well, and in just the dynamic outside of just like what does the symbol look like, because there are many variations, and some really that don't hold up to the one that you're seeing here, many variations. But there is a relationship between the sky and the earth, because obviously if there's rain or if there's something above, it has to do with what's below, and what defines below defines above. And there is a reflective quality to this. And so somehow the mirror also plays in a way. And so it's like a bit of the storm is, above, so as above, so below. All right, there's just a hair of that in there. So I find there's a hair of that in a lot of them, one of them being the Skywalker. It's kind of like the journey from the below to above. And the eagle serpent kind of riddle and dance also does the same thing. But where I'm going here with the storm is that it's like, it kind of, to me, a lot of times represents the mind. That reason being is because that like cloud is the thoughts. It's kind of like up in the head. It's like while the what do you call that? Like while the mirror can sometimes really represent the pattern of thoughts and like the quality and like, kind of like atmosphere, I guess you could say, the storm kind of represents the like energy of it and the perpetuation and like the potential like containment field and violence therein. And in many ways, it doesn't represent the mind whatsoever. But I feel in comparison to or in connection with the mirror, that it actually does have a mental quality. Now, I find really interesting too is if we utilize this kind of idealism or this like archetypalism here, that we have the mirror, storm, and the sun. And so you can see kind of in the symbol too that there's a kind of like a little eye up there, a little dot in the center. And I feel that kind of represents like the eye in the storm. There's like a clear spot. Now, we kind of shared a little bit about this yesterday when touching into the energies of the mirror in a way where we're talking about cultivating the gap between thoughts. We talked a little bit about Vipassana, I believe. And we begin to, tread this water of witnessing one's thoughts in a way where you are not attached, but you're wishing to move in a way where you're doing this work, and the work itself is very definitively representing you witnessing yourself emerge as a conscious awareness that is a source frequency that exists in the space between these self-reflections, in between these identities. And so in some way, the storm represents kind of a more embodied cloud, the cloud of that particular essence. And the sun kind of finds its way in the storm, represented as the eye within the tornado, or the eye of the hurricane. And so you have the mirror kind of representing the dynamic of reflection. And then you have the storm kind of representing the smothering cloud of thought. And then in the middle there is this kind of light, this stillness, and then the sun shines through. And so while today may be about a dynamic specifically around working out those mental qualities, tomorrow I feel maybe a much deeper clarity on the topic. Things can be a little more tumultuous today. And part of the reason I mention this is because just let it, like it's meant to be, right? We don't necessarily have to find something today. Like there's not necessarily a goal. We can allow things just to be, even though they're uncomfortable. And, a lot of people always say like, whoa, wait a minute, no, like, boundaries, this, that, and the other. If it's not good for me, I'm gonna, kind of fight against that. And I agree highly. What I also feel is that if we can witness that something is part of a natural cycle, then it's automatically going to change. And we don't have to make a change because it's essentially predestined to. And as we allow the energies that are supposed to actually be here right now, then we're going to get something out of it more so than if we attempt to push it away and we resist the process. I feel that is kind of the storm in general, is it can represent the inner conflict we have in many ways. It represents a lot of things. The storm is the self-generator. It's like the self-practice. It is how do you generate your own energy? How do you generate your own finances? How do you generate your own income? How do you, create that energy? How do you catalyze? Right? And in this aspect too, I feel there's a conflict type of energy where we can look in and be like, this, that, and the other, and not really be certain fully about something. And so this is just that day to kind of really go into that. And so in many ways as well, because we're also the planetary storm, it is the 10th day, we are formulating the manifestation. And so it's like, okay, well, in this way, we're bringing form to the manifestation. And so how are we doing that? Through the storm. How are we formulating it? Well, we're kind of like just going through it all, going through the thick of it, going through that. Because tomorrow, as the sun, comes, with a spectral tone, is going to be formulating our release. And how are we going to be formulating that release? How are we going to be formulating that disillusion? We're going to be formulating that with the energy of lightening, the energy of, letting go, like allowing things to be light and easy in many ways. And so, yeah, like a lot of this I find, is really about embodying yourself. And a lot of this work, life is an interesting thing because on the projective side, it's kind of really just goal oriented. It's like, okay, I got to achieve this. I got to get to this place. I got to reach this goal. It doesn't matter what goal it is. That's really all the outside world pertains to, is an objective formulation of energy in the modeling of goals. And so however we look at it, it's really just a goal-oriented adventure. On the inner levels, when we kind of release, even though this could be considered a goal, as we release ourselves from the kind of goal-obsessed, kind of cultural, influential, kind of modeling sequence, which is saying, hey, be this. Let's chase goals together. Let's define ourselves as a culture via this way of perceiving and showing up in reality. In this way, I'm sharing that a lot of this work, as we do this, really what we're doing is we're trimming more and more and more of these layers, which are the cultural imprints, which is things that you were born into. This being said, a lot of the things that we were born into aren't necessarily what you are. And this is where the idea of claiming sovereignty comes from. It's not to say that what you are now isn't what you would have actually chosen yourself to be, but it's recognizing that your ability to choose from the epicenter of your free will may or may not have been present while you were, let's say, 0 years old. And so being able to bridge the gap of imprints that we received from others based upon where they were at. Now, if these people were wounded or if these people were influenced in such a way that they did the best of their ability or whatnot to raise you or to bring you into this world or whatnot. We're not talking about judgment on these people at all. What we are talking about is for you to check in and say, with the being that you are, as you reach more and more of your sovereignty, as you reach more and more of your completeness, we become responsible for every aspect, every vibration, every influence in our life, even the ones that we had no choice over. And so we find a way to take responsibility for the imprints, the things that we didn't really necessarily choose to bring in as part of our being, yet still have complete command over if they are allowed within our temple, within our being. And so that's another aspect I find that really shows up today in this energy, is looking deeper into that sovereignty. And these are good questions, because we're just looking within. We're looking deep within, in this way. And so, yeah, some of these energies I find really show up. And, I find the planetary tone really kind of plays in to that, because it's about that perfection. And so it's like the storm of perfection, catalyzing that perfection. We have the manifestation as well and those other energies, but I feel today I really want to like exemplify the perfection energy, which to me is like a fine tuning. As we perfect it, that manifestation will come to be. So let's work on that perfection. Let's utilize that storm energy almost as like a sandblaster to sand off the edges of the thing that you want to shape, because you are your own art piece. And so in many ways, the storm is a more turbulent energy, which you can harness. Instead of resisting it today, maybe like, what, maybe it is uncomfortable or whatnot, but it's here, it's in my face today, and so I'm gonna actually stop. Like, say you have a task or whatnot, or someone else expects you to do something or whatnot, be like, hey, I'm taking this day for me. I need to sit here and just go through this and process whatever, and allow that to make space for it. That begins to become the eye in the storm, where that sun begins to shine through. Because instead of trying to say, hey, let's just do this cultural imprint thing and let other people and false time and all these things rule my life, it's like, well, let's make time for ourselves. Let's make reality for us. Let's dream the dream that we want to live and we want to share with others, because we weren't given that choice when we were born. And we were born into a world that authentically attempts to convert our power of choice and our power of directing life and the world, because we're in a shared dream, the way we would like it to go. Instead, we've had that supplanted. We've like given up that free will, and we kind of do what we have to get by, and that's kind of a very disempowered state. Whether or not it's like, oh yeah, I'm really successful, this, that, and the other, it's like, okay, in some way it's like, good doggy. You were born, you were trained to do a thing, and you did it very successfully. Maybe you're a pro at what you do. And so this isn't about someone coming and saying, I am successful at what I did. It's like, the question is, it's like, did you from birth choose that? Is this truly, truly who you are? If so, then all the power to you. And if so, then maybe you'll even become more aligned with what you're doing. And it isn't just a state of you being trained. I think this is very valuable in the dog wavespell, because the dog actually represents, a lot of the qualities of the dog. And the thing about the dog, kind of being trained and forced and modeled into being something. And I think there's a good question that the dog energy raises up to us in our culture. And it's like, maybe we are something's pets too. And we have this really limited freedom, and we think, oh yeah, life's great, and all these kind of things, and I'm very loyal to the process, and what if that pet owner is thinking of selling you, or putting you down because it doesn't like something about you. And I feel there's a distinction between that relationship. Is I have heard lots of dog stories, and some of it represents a really nasty relationship between, pet and pet owner or whatever. And I think this is a good kind of logic to bring into our life around believing that we are free and we really have this life going for us. Maybe it is really all just an illusion, right? And so the storm is this particular day is to really check into what really is real for us. And are we the ones that are really in command of our life? Or is it more just that we are, in service or in slavery to a phenomenon which doesn't hold us in regard, that doesn't exalt in our fulfillment and our what do you call that? Your exaltation. It's like, wow, you're such an incredible being, and I want you to be the most of who you are, And so, anyway, just some things to meditate upon there. And I feel that kind of portrays the storm energy for today. Okay, so let's go to the affirmation section of today's episode.